Well, Barack Obama has just been busted. Apparently, in a new released book, Obama was on a phone call with Miss Pelosi and he was furious with her and said, "What the F did you just do?" You guys are going to be floored to find out what I'm talking about and why he made that statement. Not only that, but on another note, Congress right now has got their eyes on Bill Gates, George Soros, Neville Singham, and even someone from the Biden administration and their potential links to the Communist Party. There are some major investigations going on right now that I have to share with you. And I believe Congress is preparing a jail cell, so to speak, with the DOJ and some indictments that could eventually be headed their way. I've got a lot to share with you. And this is my opinion of what's going on. But before I do, I got to give a quick shout out to my sponsor. Well, if you've been told the only way to control high blood pressure is by a cabinet full of pills, then you're going to want to listen up. A leading blood pressure doctor from Texas has discovered what he calls an old salt trick. In his study, participants used this simple method and saw their numbers drop into a healthy range, often in just weeks. In fact, the best part is many were even able to reduce their medications with their doctor's approval. Just imagine going from dangerously high readings to a near perfect blood pressure. Imagine saying goodbye to the endless cycles of prescriptions and the constant fear of heart problems. In fact, if you or someone you know struggles with high blood pressure and you're looking for a safe and natural alternative, then you are absolutely going to want to check this out. All you have to do is go to myprimal.life/Lisa BP. This could be exactly what you have been searching for, and I highly recommend you check it out today. All you have to do as well, if you want more information, scan this code right here on the screen. Scan it right now with your cell phone, and you can check it out. And if you want more information, there's also a link in the description box below. And if you're on your cell phone, you can find that with the More button. As a quick reminder, please also make sure you're still subscribed to the channel and go all the way up to that bell button to make sure you have the bell checked and like the video. But with that, let's dive into what the heck is going on. Let's start first with Barack Obama. Take a look at this. This is on the Daily Mail. What the F did you just do? Obama's furious call to Nancy Pelosi after election betrayal. Former President Barack Obama wasn't pleased that former Speaker of the House, Miss Pelosi, endorsed VP Kamala Harris the day after Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race. In his new book, Retribution, ABC News' Jonathan Karl provided new details on what had been widely known, that Obama didn't want a quick coronation of Harris, but rather a process to determine who would become the Democrat nominee, which, by the way, they should have done because Kamala Harris blew up in their faces, right? But it goes on to state this. And it says Obama called Pelosi shortly after her endorsement of Harris became public. The Obamas were not happy, a Pelosi confidant told Karl. The person summed up the Obamas' message to Pelosi as essentially, "What the F did you just do?" Pelosi told the former Democrat president, "Well, the train has left the station." In other words, the damage is done. But the endorsement had come as a surprise to Obama because he and Pelosi had been in regular communications as it appeared then 81-year-old Biden was nearing the decision to drop out of the race. And they agreed Harris should not simply be handed the nomination unchallenged, Karl wrote. This is something they agreed to prior, supposedly. Therefore, Obama and Pelosi, arguably the two most influential figures in the Democrat Party, had privately agreed to abstain from making any endorsements, the longtime ABC News reporter said. The problem with that is Nancy Pelosi decided on her own that she would endorse Kamala Harris anyway, because Pelosi, at about 1 p.m. the next day, she endorsed Harris, leaving Obama, they say miffed, I would say pissed. The former president wanted to know what had happened. Why had Pelosi issued a statement endorsing Harris so soon? Hadn't he and Pelosi agreed days earlier that the party leaders Anointing the VP as Biden's replacement would be a mistake, Carl wrote. A source close to Obama told Carl that the former president wasn't actually angry at Pelosi over the endorsement, characterizing the conversation as a good-natured ribbing. But the source close to the California congressman remembered it differently, believing Obama sounded genuinely irritated by Pelosi's move, using the four-letter word to describe the tone. Well, there you have it. I mean, it is what it is, right? There's a lot of infighting lately within the Democrat Party. But on another note, there is what I'm calling good information coming up with Congress regarding the likes of Bill Gates, George Soros, Neville Singham, and even another guy that I'm going to bring up. But our congressional leaders are starting to ask questions of these people who have been funding these radical left organizations for quite some time. And they're starting to inquire to them about, where is your money really going? Because there could potentially be some links to the Communist Party. No joke. Take a look at this. And this is on Fox Business. Gates Foundation helped raise China's voice of governance in Africa. The emails show the foundation helped grease the skids for Chinese-produced medications, right? So this happened first. This was all released back in August of 2021. This is some of the stuff that had came to light in the past, right? And I'm not going to get into detail on all of that. But now, in light of these reports that are older, our Senate Judiciary Committee is now launching a probe into the Gates Foundation to find out what is truly going on. And this is on Zero Hedge. Senate Judiciary launches probe into Gates Foundation's alleged funding of Chinese military fronts. So it's not just that one, it's other ones that they're really looking into. And here's the deal. Bill Gates is already in a lot of trouble. He already dropped the Arabella Network, which was funding, color revolutions and the No King protests and other protests. He backed out his funding. And then recently, hopefully you watched yesterday's report, I will link it below, but about what the hell just happened to Bill Gates. Well, he has kind of backed out a lot on the climate narrative and saying, oh, we're not all going to die. It's still important, but we're all not going to die. But, it's not as cataclysmic as they say. And, just kind of pulling a 180. And I think he's just covering his keister, if you get my drift. And this is yet another reason I think he's kind of backing out of that, because he's starting to get inquired about regarding some of his connections to these radical groups, including the CCP. But here's what it says regarding the Gates Foundation, right? Like I already said, he cut ties with the Arabella Network and all of that. But now there is congressional pressure mounting on Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley of Iowa launched an investigation into the foundation's alleged funneling of tens of millions of dollars in grants to entities tied to the CCP, raising serious concerns over potential violations of U.S. tax laws governing 501c3 world. Now, these are not grounds, by the way, as far as I know, for arrests. However, they could be violations of tax laws or could be fines. It just really depends on the entire situation. But these companies could lose their 501c3 status as a result. But here is what Chuck Grassley posted, and this is what he is requesting from the chief executive officer at the Gates Foundation, and that's Mark Sussman. And here's what it states. According to recent reports, the Gates Foundation, through grants and direct payments, have funded the CCP and its allies. I am writing today to ask you whether these reports are true or not, and if they are true, how your organizations conduct comports with 501c3 requirements, which I think we have every right to know. And we don't know if they're doing that or not. These are the accusations, which is why they're looking into it. According to the reports, in 2023, the Gates Foundation directed roughly $11.7 million into various arms of Chinese communist-controlled government, as well as $2 million to a corporation of the DoD determined works with the Chinese military, and an additional $6.7 million to state-run universities that help prop up Chinese President Xi Jinping's regime. According to the reports, the Gates Foundation labels most of its grants to the communist government as public health initiatives concerning research, global health awareness, and sanitation, among other things. According to the Gates Foundation, FY 2022 tax filing, the nonprofit provided approximately $23 million in funding to over 20 different Chinese entities, some of which were labeled as foreign governments. And obviously, those are the ones that they really want to look into. And by the way, this could be a little hard to prove because, obviously you could say, oh, it's just for sanitation, for global health, and yada, yada. So just kind of giving you the heads up. But 501c3 of the International Revenue Code provides that tax-exempt status for entities that are organized and operated exclusively for charitable purposes. They can lose their tax-exempt status for failing to pursue the exempt purpose it describes in its application in the IRS with regard to activity in foreign countries. In other words, they can't have that status if they're dealing with foreign countries in a certain way, right? But anyway, there's certain rules that you have to follow. And the question is, were those rules followed or not? So here's some of the stuff that they're looking for and requesting from the Gates Foundation. You can pause it and read it on your own to see. But basically, in a nutshell, Chuck Grassley and everyone are saying, hey, in our Congress, we're looking into this, and you've got to respond, by the way, by November 10th. They have a November 10th deadline for them to get the answers to those questions. And I can't wait to see some of the answers, because if there is some corruption going on, and there are ties with the Communist Party, there's certain rules that have to be followed. Now, with that, there's also, kind of as a reminder, our House Republicans are also probing a couple of Chinese-linked billionaires, right? And Neville Singham is one of those. I think that, if what they're accusing him of is legitimately legit, I think we could see some jail time for someone like that, or kicked out of the country, or banning of him in the country, something to that effect, because it's pretty extreme, some of the stuff they're looking into with Neville. And even George Soros in this case, they're all, and Neville Singham actually exited the country stage left, which tells you a lot, right? But anyway, Zero Hedge, House Republicans probe China-based billionaire allegedly bankrolling anti-ICE riots. U.S. congressional Republican led by the Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer launched a formal investigation on Friday into the dark money networks and political affiliations of billionaire Neville Roy Singham, a U.S. national reportedly residing in communist China. And by the way, this was back in June, so we've got some time on this, and they are questioning him. But it goes on to state this as well. It says, Oversight Chairman Comer and Declassification Task Force Chairman Anna Paulina Luna threatened to subpoena the far-left billionaire if he refused to cooperate with the investigation into potential ties in sparking social unrest through a network of revolutionary leftist non-governmental organization. The lawmakers allege that Singham could be linked to the ongoing unrest and chaos in LA. That's why he could have more serious charges. And as a reminder, Representative Anna Paulina Luna announced that George Soros and Neville Singham are being called in to testify over funding leftist riots and radical political groups. So she's called them in to testify. If they don't come in and if they don't testify, she will proceed forward with a subpoena. That's kind of where we're at on all of that. So George Soros is on their radar for the ties to the radical lefts. Neville Singham is on their radar. And of course, Bill Gates, who has met, by the way, with the president a couple of times. Not only that, but this is new information that has also surfaced regarding a Biden official who has been allegedly working with the Chinese group to undermine Donald Trump's tariffs, right? To kind of send a message in America that tariffs that he's doing with China are bad, and just spreading a Chinese message to the American people. This is a big issue here. He could get in a lot of trouble for this. Zero Hedge, Biden official worked with Chinese influence group to undermine U.S. tariff negotiations. When Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on Chinese goods, the CCP just didn't retaliate with trade measures. It launched an information war using American insiders to spread its narrative that tariffs were reckless and self-defeating. And that's the overall concept of this entire article. But the person who was accused here is one of the prominent voices that were in the Biden campaign, Rick Waters. He is a former senior U.S. diplomat who once directed the State Department's China House. Since he left the government, he has become a reliable messenger for Beijing's preferred positions, appearing with CCP-linked influence groups and using our media outlets to promote pro-China talking points that undermine Trump's trade strategy. And it gets into the organization that he was with, and it's this organization here and how they're linked to China, and then how he went basically on media and started bashing and saying what Donald Trump's doing with these tariffs are bad, it's unsustainable, it's overestimating its leverage, binging China needs to hold firm. So you can see this is a very pro-Chinese message that he was giving. And I am really giving a summation of this whole thing because I don't want to get into it all. But basically, he's painting China as strategic and disciplined and putting the U.S. in a very bad spot. Well, apparently, the guy's got all these ties to China. And that's why it was done. So there's some pretty serious questions that he's going to have to answer within the Biden administration as well. Anyhow, I wanted to share all of that to you guys regarding what's going on. Interesting stuff happening. I really hope we see some indictments eventually. If they don't come and respond, hopefully we see some subpoenas. And as a result of those conversations with Congress, if some crimes are being committed by Neville Roy or George Soros or Bill Gates or even this new guy that we heard of, he's not being subpoenaed or called in yet, but Rick Waters, then we need to see some action, and hopefully they'll end up in a jail cell for the crimes that they committed, because Lord only knows if the average American person had done it, we'd be in jail. Fair's only fair. Anyhow, I love the fact that Congress is really lighting a flame to all of this, because it's about damn time that these people get investigated, because we all know if they continue to fund these radical left groups and the CCP arm, nothing's going to get fixed here in the United States. We've got to stop the funding on a lot of that. Anyhow, I love you all. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.